Virginia Governor Ralph Northam once again said that he would not step down 1 week after a racist photo led to calls for him to resign. If Northam did step down, Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax, you see there, would be the first in line to replace him. But now 2 women are accusing Fairfax of sexual assault. And the state's attorney general has also admitted to wearing blackface in the past. Nicole Killian is in Richmond, Virginia with the latest on the growing list of scandals.
It is a crime. Sexual assault is a crime. Rape is a crime. And I believe he's unfit for office.
Virginia Democratic Delegate Patrick Hope says he will introduce articles of impeachment on Monday against Justin Fairfax if the lieutenant governor hasn't resigned by then.
Is this a rush to judgment?
No, I don't believe it's a rush to judgment at all. Not just one person, but 2 people. Very believable statements, putting their lives and careers on the line to make these statements. This is a pattern of behavior.
Every Democrat in the state legislature called on Fairfax to leave office Friday after a second woman accused him of sexual assault. In a statement issued by her lawyers, Meredith Watson says Fairfax raped her in 2000 in a, quote, premeditated and aggressive attack when both were Duke University students. Fairfax quickly responded. In a statement, he denied the new accusation as demonstrably false and said he has, quote, never force myself on anyone, ever. Earlier in the week, Fairfax denied an allegation leveled against him by Vanessa Tyson, who says Fairfax forced her to perform oral sex on him in 2004. Fairfax maintains he will not resign. Meanwhile, Governor Ralph Northam told state employees in a letter he intends to stay in office. Last week, a racist photo from his medical school yearbook surfaced. Northam initially said he was in the picture, only to backtrack later, then acknowledge he once wore blackface. On Friday, the governor met with the president of the National Black Farmers Association.
Based on my conversation with the governor today, I believe what he's saying, and I believe that the governor should be given another chance here to govern in Virginia.
Well, joining us now to talk about the latest in the Virginia controversy is CBSN political contributor and conservative columnist Michael Graham. So, Michael, I want to kick it off with Virginia. So many in his own party are calling for the Lieutenant Governor of Fairfax to resign. Can he really survive this?
Absolutely, because it's going to take the Democrats inside Virginia to impeach him, to remove him from office. It's going to take Democrats to remove an African-American office holder from office. And that is another political issue fraught with horror. But can I add something personal about the whole Virginia story? I grew up in rural South Carolina. Literally, the head of the KKK, Horace King, lived half a mile, 3/4 of a mile from my house. And I never, ever saw anyone in blackface anywhere. It never even occurred to me. I actually called some high school friends. And they go, did any of this ever happen? What's happening in Virginia is so ugly. And it's ugly in a way that's very easy for voters to process. And now Democrats find themselves in a tough spot because after declaring talking about the phrase dog whistles, Republicans are secretly racist for talking about tax cuts. Now you have 2 Democrats in blackface. After the demands that Judge Kavanaugh should be denied a seat on the Supreme Court over uncorroborated claims of bad sexual behavior from 35 years ago. Now you have 2 cases with witnesses with contemporaneous accounts, et cetera. Democrats really have got to figure out how are they going to move forward, because there will be consequences afterwards for the next political fight. If Virginia Democrats leave the status quo, which it appears to be going towards that way with Governor Northam in power, I promise you President Trump and his allies will use that every time the issue of race and justice comes up in the political arena.
Interesting. So it has, you're saying, far more implications than just the state of Virginia. Exactly. You were talking a little bit about impeachment. Virginia delegate Patrick Hope said that he will file articles of impeachment if Justin Fairfax doesn't resign. How come Democrats are not taking those same steps against Governor Northam at this point?
Well, the pragmatic argument is because you could find yourself with Governor Attorney General who has his own blackface scandal, which means you're one step away from the Republican Speaker of the House becoming governor. And I promise you this, whatever the outcome is, I don't care if they find photos of Democrats participating in bank robberies and crimes. Virginia Democrats are not going to let a Republican become governor. So any other option but that is the one they'll pursue.
Boy, I got to ask you about yesterday's hearing with the Attorney General, Acting Attorney General Matthew Whitaker. Oh, my goodness. He said very little in this hearing, but the contention, they were sparring with lawmakers just to get answers out of him. What ultimately, Michael, what did we learn from that hearing yesterday?
Well, we didn't learn anything. And that's one of the frustrations. It's hard to learn when people are demanding, did you call it a witch hunt? Witch hunt. Okay, that's not what the Attorney General does. This isn't a word game. It's not a debate society. But I think the thing that jumped out, and I go to people who are not political on this. My lovely bride is not political at all. She doesn't, she leaves that to me. And she was watching the news coverage on CBSN this morning of the story, and she goes, didn't they just pick a new guy? Isn't he going away in like a week? And so it was just eye-rolling, and you got to be kidding me. Really, you're going to have this ugly of a fight over a guy who literally won't have the job 2 weeks from now. It shows a level of contentiousness that I think a lot of voters who might be, swing voters to the whole process. And if President Trump is able to make the conversation towards 2020 a pox on all your houses conversation, in other words, I know you don't like me, but look at these people. He had a very good week this week, starting with the State of the Union and going all the way through Elizabeth Warren's announcement that we just saw here on CBSN.
I'm just curious, how many voters are in your wife's same camp who are not necessarily political, but just are sick of the partisanship on Capitol Hill? Do you think that we're going to see just more and more of these partisan hearings that won't really lead to many more answers?
That's an interesting question. I see stuff through a political prism because I cover politics, obviously, for Inside Sources and Boston Herald. And I think about the Howard Schultz candidacy. Here's a guy who's kind of standing up and saying, aren't you sick of all these people? Yeah, I'm a coffee guy. I'm just going to run as the guy who's sick of all this fighting. And there's some interesting polling that's come out this week that the idea of a third-party candidacy is not necessarily dead in the water. Those are the people who look at that hearing we saw this week and say, let's do something else. And you wonder if there is not a something else dynamic. And the more, for example, very partisan messages come from both candidates like Elizabeth Warren and Kamala Harris on the left, and then Trump, of course, plays his Trump hardcore fighting role on the right, the more that clash is just going to create, theoretically, more voters who say, I don't want either of these channels, just turn the channel.
President Trump tweeted his response to the hearing saying that Democrats were going after Whitaker because that they know that they cannot legitimately win in 2020. And last week, he told Margaret Brennan on Face the Nation that Democrats can only win the White House in 2020 by impeaching him. He said that's the only way to get in. So is the president at this point trying to really delegitimize the 2020 elections before they even have begun?
Rena, I can't just believe you used the phrase, is he doing this now? I mean, he's been doing that from day one. He's had the same conversation. But one thing I would remind the president, I just wrote about it this week, the new state-by-state polling numbers came out from Morning Consult, and they reflect that in the swing states where either Trump won, like Iowa, he's down by 10 points, or states where he came really close that should be potentially a pickup in 2020, like New Hampshire, where he came within 1,500 votes, he's down by 18 points. And if those numbers stand, it doesn't matter what he says, doesn't matter what kind of investigations are. If you can't carry something in the Iowa, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, arena, you're just going to struggle against any Democrat.
Elizabeth Warren, of course, announced her bid for presidency. The Trump campaign released a statement bashing her credibility, calling her dishonest and a fraud. Why are they so focused on Warren? Do they see her as the real threat in this campaign?
That's really interesting. There's a lot of different math, and I don't know who I trust, the people I talk to who are big, Trump insider types, what they believe. I do believe, though, the reporting this week from Axios that when the Green New Deal was announced, and TV screens showed Warren and Harris and Booker and so many others lining up behind it, that, quote, it was like Christmas and Hanukkah inside the White House. They were giddy because it is such a tough political sell. And I think you heard that in Elizabeth Warren's speech today. When your message to America, we have to have fundamental change, down to the whole shebang, you can't drive cars, or, we have to, fundamentally change, your taxes and property and just the big stuff. that's easy for somebody who wants to use the politics of fear to use against you. On one hand, it can be politics of hope. We're going to have massive change. On the other hand, change is scary, and that could be the dynamic. I will say the fact that just north of me right now in New Hampshire, 4 Democrats in the federal delegation, none of them have endorsed the Green New Deal, despite all the pressure and enthusiasm. They're in a state that's kind of purpley. And I also saw, if you look at the co-sponsors of the Green New Deal, I think only one of them is in one of the Democratic districts that the GOP is targeting for 2020 because it's kind of a swing district. Almost everybody else is from a deep blue place like Massachusetts, where you can endorse anything and you're going to be safe. I think President Trump has reason to be hopeful that Democrats may be overplaying their progressive hand towards 2020.
Yeah, everyone wondering, well, the final Democratic candidate will have to move a little bit more closer to the center to get those votes in the home stretch. Michael Graham, I want to thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks so much.
You bet.